You are listening to Off the Shelf, a podcast by The Conference Board.
Hello. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Off the Shelf, a book discussion series brought to you by The Conference Board. My name is Cassie Stern, and I am the Program Director of the Customer Experience Council at The Conference Board. Today, I will be with Karen Mangia to discuss her timely latest book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. Karen Mangia is Vice President, Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce. Her work focuses on strategies for personal and professional success, and she regularly works with executives, managers, and future leaders at companies of all sizes, even globally. Committed to diversity and inclusion, she serves on her company's Racial Equality and Justice Task Force. She also just released another book, Listen Up: How to Tune In to Customers and Turn Down the Noise, which was released in October 2020. So this year, 2 books in a very banner year. Her very first book was published in 2016 and is entitled Success with Less, which is a book that chronicles her personal journey through a life-threatening health crisis. She is a TEDx speaker, has been featured in Forbes, and has written for Thrive Global and ZDNet. I have known Karen for a few years, since she is also a founding member of the Customer Experience Council at the Conference Board. She is very insightful and talented, and I am so pleased to welcome Karen to today's program.
Thanks so much, Cassie. It's great to be here. And what I love about this is we get to have a conversation. And isn't that a decadent luxury? I mean, we're not on video getting Zoom fatigue, and we're not watching a bunch of PowerPoint slides. So this is going to be lots of fun today.
Oh, I totally agree. I'm really excited for this chat. Well, let's begin. After I read your book and I contemplated my own career since I'm now retired, I had to manage a global remote workforce, even though not everyone was remote. And I couldn't help recalling that I never did have any course or training to manage this. Welcome to the Shift is the way you explained it for moving from like partial or none to totally remote. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how others should approach this, and possibly what companies should do to get their leaders trained?
You are not alone. I mean, 43% of people are working from home for the first time right now, and that includes senior executives and people managers. And I'll never forget the time when I was doing a session for CEOs around the world, and the CEO who was moderating the conversation with me kicked off our conversation by saying, Karen, I'm one of the people you talk about in your book, just like you detailed, Cassie. He said, I've been a successful CEO for decades, and I have never had 1 minute of training about how to lead a workforce that I can't see. And it is a shift. And I guess taking a page from my own career and looking back, I started working from home in 2002 before it was coerced or cool, let's say. And I didn't really think consciously about what that would take until over time, I would start to notice, I wasn't sitting in a very comfortable chair and I got a backache, or I was sitting too much, or I missed connecting with people. And I was fortunate because I got to make those adjustments a little at a time over time. Whereas the scenario we find ourselves in now is people were instantly sent into that new experience, and in lots of cases with little to no guidance about how to work from home well. And so when I took on a role, on our company's work from home task force, what we started thinking about was not just the technology tools to help people do their jobs, also tools to help people managers succeed in leading at a distance. And what I encourage people to do right now is just to take a pause, whether you lead a team of people formally or not, and just ask yourself, what's working and what's not working. And for lots of folks, in all types of organizations, we're identifying we need some new skills. And the organizations I see that are really thriving and adapting during this period of time are taking that concept of training and breaking it down into just 10-minute increments that are kind of crowdsourced, where people can come together and maybe learn about a different technology setup for your home office, or talk about how to have a difficult performance conversation with someone you can't see in person. I mean, there's goodness to crowdsourcing and learning together in these very small increments, the practical skills that we all need as people managers and employees to be successful right now.
That's excellent. I also loved your insights for leaders and using the phrase, I hear you, and how can I help? Many leaders do not realize that this is really their role, to help others be successful for the good of the company. What advice do you have for leaders? And I believe we all are leaders, even if not leading people. And how do you give all your employees their undivided attention in this virtual world?
Distraction is the new dismissiveness. And we've all had this scenario play out in person. So this isn't unique to being in a virtual or a home office. You walk by a colleague's desk or your boss's desk to share an update, maybe good news or align on a decision or get some advice. And what you get is the sound of the keyboard tapping, and the person doesn't look up while they're saying, And in that moment, we don't feel heard, right? And what happens in this world of video conferences is small moves that we make get magnified. It's like we're all working on a jumbotron. And when we're trying to give a presentation or really connect with someone, maybe in a one-on-one conversation, and we see their eyes scan away or their head turned down, or maybe you get that little glimpse of their mobile device out of the corner of the video screen, we instantly start to feel that we're not being heard, that we're not making a connection that's authentic. And I think a few things make a big difference that are very easy to implement. First is quality over quantity. Everyone would prefer to have 10 minutes with a manager or colleague or a customer with your full attention, as opposed to 30 minutes of pseudo distraction. I think the second thing is asking questions to make sure that we're filling in the nonverbals is critical. So if you see someone look away, it's okay to pause and say, do you need a minute to attend to that? Or is it better for us to meet at another time when I can have your full attention? Ask, as opposed to filling in the story of, the person I'm talking to isn't interested in what I have to say. The third piece is being thoughtful about what's on our calendars. We all get pulled into lots of meetings and conversations. And sometimes what happens is we get so busy with those meetings and to-dos that it's difficult to give people our full attention for hours on end, back to back every day. So I had a leader share with me, he said, one of the most important things to me during this period of time is to connect with my employees and have a pulse on how they're doing. And he said, when I looked at my calendar, what I realized is there was no room on it for that spontaneous connection of an employee popping up to say, I need help, or having a few minutes, to reach out and connect with someone just sort of off cycle outside of a scheduled meeting. And he made some changes to his calendar to make space for that. And I know we're all challenged to find space on our calendars right now. And 3 questions I found really helped me reclaim some time on my calendar and take a few things off my to-do list, and I'd offer them to the listeners. So 3 questions and a bonus question as well. First, does it have to be me? Second, does it have to be me right now? And third, does it have to be a meeting? So looking back at that, does it have to be me? Does it have to be me right now? Right? Does it have to be a meeting? It's all in service of saying what's most important and how can you make room for that? And for most people, the answer to that is human connection.
Yeah, those 3 statements I think are excellent to ask yourself every day. Getting your point across and sharing compelling strategy is different in this virtual world. You have wonderful insights into creating spectacular online meetings. of what you call the 3Ds. Have a directive, be direct, and be the director. Can you expand on this and share some of your insights on creating meaningful dialogues virtually?
Think about one of your favorite television or movie viewing experiences. And when you think about that, one of the reasons you probably feel so engaged with what's happening is because someone behind the scenes planned very thoughtfully where they wanted you to direct your attention at any given moment, how they wanted you to feel, and how they could support that feeling and that engagement. And to some degree, we're all producers and directors and broadcasters now. And great presentations do a couple of things. First, be direct. The simplest message is the strongest. Consider starting your presentation with a slide that shows the outcomes. Start with the punchline so you make sure people are engaged, right? You make sure that the most important message is going to be heard. And when I was fortunate to interview an individual for the book who is a very successful Hollywood producer and director and the brains behind some shows that we all know, like Pawn Stars, for example, and Bar Rescue, one of the things he said is, imagine that I am having a meeting with you to let you know I've found a chef to cater your wedding or party. And imagine I look at you and I say, I've got Gordon Ramsay. Do I need to say anything else after that? Probably not. My message is very clear. You're clear on the value of that, right? He's like, now imagine if I said, so here's the thing. My wife's brother's son just got out of prison and he's really looking for a new start in life. And I know it doesn't really sound like it, but he is actually an amazing cook and we just need to give him a chance. What? Okay, hang on. That's not the simplest message anymore, right? Your value isn't clear. Next is be thoughtful about where you're directing people's eyes and attention. What's behind you in the background? What is it on that visual you want people to see? Can you incorporate some physical elements that you hold up? Can you use some polling questions in chat, anything to create that interaction, but also direct the scene the way that you want people to see it, feel it, and engage with it? And then make sure that you are very clear about what you're trying to accomplish and if that message has been heard. And if you think about it, all great shows we watch do that, right? They draw us in with some visual elements, some feelings elements, but also with a very crisp, clear message.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it also works in a non-virtual world. There's so many times when the message is clouded on those PowerPoint slides.
Yes, the fewer the words, the better.
That's right. Verbal economy. We like it.
Well said.
You are listening to a podcast conversation with Karen Mangia discussing her book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. We are going to take a very short break for some quick announcements and be back in just a minute to continue this fascinating and quite timely conversation with Karen.
Can you, your team, or your company benefit from insights such as the ones provided in this podcast? They are immediately available when you join the Conference Board, a membership-based think tank that delivers trusted insights for what's ahead. Reaching across industries and geographies, we bring together our noted experts, senior executives from the world's largest companies, and nonpartisan practical research to help you address your most important business issues. Our membership packages are tailored to your organization's unique needs and budget. To learn more about our offerings, go to www.conferenceboard.org and click Join on the top bar to connect with one of our product specialists.
Hello, and welcome back to our conversation with Karen Mangia, who is discussing her new book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. We were just discussing verbal economy. Now I want to switch gears and go to how can leaders better recognize our employees' accomplishments given the limited visibility we have while the workforce is more remote than ever? What steps can you think the employees can take to increase their own visibility in a positive way?
Well, in the book, I share a study called Leading the Leaders, and it talks about how such a high degree of people in this virtual context report feeling isolated and invisible. And what starts to happen in that mode where we feel invisible or like we're not getting acknowledged for our work is that becomes a gateway to burnout, believe it or not, because people hang on to tasks that they could stop or delegate. And what they're really trying to do is get some acknowledgement, to be seen for what they're contributing, and also to some degree to make sure they're still relevant, to their boss and to the leaders in their organization. There's a range of recognition that works. What tends to work best, though, is that one-on-one conversation with someone that you have live where you just use a simple sentence like, I see you. Thanks for the great contribution of fill in the blank. Some other organizations I've been working with have been doing kind of a wins of the week, where on the last day of the week, the manager will gather from people on the team 8 to 10 things they feel great about, and the manager will share it at the end of the day going into the weekend so that people can feel the accomplishment and progress of the week, get some recognition that you can move around across the team, and also get that sense of connectedness and community. That I'm not just off on my own, making something happen. The other really powerful tool for recognizing employees, especially as you're working with them in this virtual world to develop and advance their careers during this period of time, is the tool of ownership. And I don't know about you, I think back to some really pivotal bosses in my career who I admire that from time to time would pull me aside and say, okay, we've really been working on building this skill. I think you're ready to go use it. So I think it's time for you to represent me in fill in the blank meeting. I trust you to own that. You're ready. Now, as we make that transition, what could you do to open up an opportunity for someone on your team? Being trusted to own increasingly more strategic tasks in the organization is a form of recognition, so long as it comes with them also offloading some tasks. This isn't a yes and.
Yeah, I like that, especially since it really values the employee and has that conversation working. Do you know any of the leaders in some of the companies that you have worked with or for who seem to be getting it right on really balancing this new normal with profitability and making sure their employees feel valued in this virtual world?
Twitter is doing a great job of making sure that they have representative voices at the table. So it starts with, if we're trying to think about better recognition programs or employee benefits and how those need to shift at this point in time, it's really critical to understand all of the use cases of the people who are in your organization. And I have a lot of respect for the fact that they started out by listening to their employees. And what they discovered was once they rolled out some programs that weren't as effective as they had hoped, they brought them back in and got together to dig deeper about what was missing. And what they realized was they did not have all the voices at the table that needed to be heard. So it starts with employee engagement. It starts with listening. It starts with deep understanding. And then what I like about the way they're approaching training is they're thinking about it in terms of communities of interest. And in their case, they have a great example, and I share more in the book, where they put together communities of people who were about at the same level in the company. And that was as far as they took the formalization. They just said, here's your group of people. What we'd like you to do is be able to meet on a regular basis and teach each other some skills, but also bring up the challenges that you're facing and talk through how to solve those together. And so in so doing, they did a couple of things. First, they helped leaders in their organization and employees gain some new skills. Second, they gained a sense of connection. Third, they gained a sense of community. And it didn't take a massive initiative that was expensive and time consuming and formally enrolling. What they found was when they could bring together people in small groups, either by job title or area of interest, people could connect, they could co-create, they could belong. And within that, they could teach each other some skills, and it gives everybody a chance to participate, right? I mean, everyone has a skill or an idea to contribute right now because we're all new to working in a pandemic. We're all new to leading in this kind of context. And that means everybody has something relevant to contribute.
Yeah, it's very similar to designing a product where you need one of every food group in that particular design process. So by pushing everybody into this virtual group, you probably get a lot more creativity coming out.
Yes, more voices and more representation tend to result in a more effective outcome.
Speaking of employees again, should our companies have some kind of guideline for those employees who are working from home and they're also overseeing their children's remote learning, or they may be a sandwich generation where they're dealing with their parents? And these situations, they demand a lot of time off during what was deemed those normal working hours, the 9 to 5-ish. How should we be supporting our employees during this time?
My heart goes out to caregivers of all kinds, whether that's taking care of an older generation or your children, and some folks who are doing both at the same time. I just had a senior executive at a company describe to me that she has 3 generations living under her roof right now while she's still trying to lead in this kind of a context at a senior level. And that's a lot to navigate. What companies can offer that's most helpful is some flexibility and choice. The opportunity to do some work asynchronously using things like collaborative tools, and being conscious about the meeting culture. Back to that, does it have to be a meeting? Not every discussion requires being in a video meeting at the same time in order to get something accomplished. And what I found really helps anchor those conversations in a positive direction and spans multiple types of organizational cultures is stepping back to think about outcomes. What are the outcomes that you are expecting each employee to deliver? How can you clearly communicate those? And how can you talk through which of those outcomes, requires a meeting or a more connected communication style or working hours versus which ones don't? So I think it starts with getting curious about what are the outcomes and then what's the working style required to get there. And then also within your home construct, as an employee trying to navigate all of that, be thoughtful about conversations that you can have with, the other adults who might be in your household about how can we stagger, our most important meetings of the day. And that may not always be possible, but as much as possible, try to put some coordination time into, can someone be available, so that you can do a little bit of the back and forth and shifts.
That's great. You also had some hints, I believe, in the book on making your home office and routine to show your best self. But you have also a variety of tools, I think virtual escape rooms and whiteboarding. Can you share with us how companies are reinventing their playbooks in this new normal using tools such as those?
What people are looking for is connection and, still being able to have a little bit of fun. It's very easy to go from meeting to meeting and try to get right down to business all the time because we feel constrained and we want to get something done, and making space for connection is critically important. And what works in every culture is different. One example that stands out to me, Cassie, is the activity that we did with our customer experience council of this virtual scavenger hunt and asking people, go find something green or your most interesting tchotchke or something that reminds you of a trip. And it took just a few minutes. And when people came back together and shared everything from their alma mater to a favorite travel story to a hidden skill we didn't know anything about, it didn't take very long, and it established a different type of fun and connection. And I think that's so critical. We still want to connect as people. We still want to replicate what happens when we used to be able to have a happy hour or get together for a coffee. And some of those just small, quick activities can be great tools to create some engagement and also just temporarily postpone or pause or suspend the seriousness of the reality we all feel like we're living in right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. It sets the tone for the meeting, makes it a little bit lighthearted. People don't feel as much on edge if they have now been able to share a little bit about themselves. You also have a great chapter in the book called Redefining Success in the New Normal. Can you share the secrets to success and how it is different than the past? Or is it that the pandemic has given us the freedom to do what we should have been doing all along?
So often we know what we need to do for ourselves, and we're waiting for someone else to give us permission to do it. I mean, I think back to publishing Success with Less a number of years ago. And as I would share these stories about a new formula for success, pause, ponder, prioritize, I was amazed at the number of people who would follow up with me after a session or after reading the book. And they would say things like, because I read your book, I finally decided to take a vacation. Your book was just what I needed to do that. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I'm guessing you knew that you were really exhausted or maybe needed some time with your family. And all that book did was give you permission to do what you already knew you needed to do for yourself. And as I think about this working from home environment that we're in, we all have permission right now to pause and to define what success means to us now. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were all adrenaline fueled and doing what we needed to do to survive, kind of the whatever it takes to keep ourselves and our families healthy and safe and whatever it takes to do our jobs. And so time fills itself in instantly. And I think in that period of time, survival and trying to adjust really was the goal. And that was success in so many ways. And now that these circumstances are extending themselves a little bit longer than we might have thought or hoped, within that is permission to pause and to assess, what does success mean to you now? How can you give yourself permission to live and to work in a sustainable way and get there maybe a few small steps at a time? So this isn't, you gained the COVID-19 pounds and now, you're going on a juice cleanse for the next 30 days because it's all coming off. It's, what's one small adjustment you can make? Maybe you cut out one night a week of the macaroni and cheese or dessert and start there. But it's, what does success look like now? And I think core to that is, how do we all set ourselves up to live and to work in a sustainable way?
Very nice. This book is so personal for leaders, employees, and really helps give tips and pointers at navigating remote working as well as visibility. It'll definitely help with employee experience and engagement, as long as all leaders and employees follow the advice that you have given in here. Employee experience is really tantamount to customer experience, which is the other book that you wrote this year as well, Listen Up, How to Tune into Customers and Turn Down the Noise. Can you spend a little time talking about the alignment between employee experience and customer experience, which I know is your passion?
That is definitely my passion. I think about people before process. And in thinking about our conversation today, I was reflecting on some research I had the opportunity to participate in with a colleague, because we all have this hypothesis, and it makes sense intellectually, that happy employees or satisfied employees are more likely to deliver better customer experiences. What we were curious about was, how does that translate overall to results? Is there a way to really quantify that? And so we did some research in conjunction with Forbes and asked some of those questions and got curious. And one of the outcomes and discoveries is that organizations who first invest in their employee experience and then extend to investing in and prioritizing their customer experience grow at 1.8x the rate of those that don't. And what I found interesting about that is, it quantifies that investing in the experience our employees have, which involves listening to them deeply, is one of the most powerful growth tools that all organizations have at their disposal.
Oh, so true. Employees are customers, and they're going to relate better to their customers if they're treated well. We are moving toward the end of our program, and I'd like to switch gears and have something lighthearted. What kind of books are you reading now? Can be fact or fiction that have been the most inspiring to you.
Well, one of the books that I really enjoy is a book called Life Scale, written by Brian Solis. And what I like about the book is it takes you through how to tap into your own creativity and reconnect with the creative process. And it has a lot to do with how to minimize and eliminate distractions. So I found that incredibly insightful because, you know, we all get distracted. We're all trying to find some ways to, you know, maybe come up with the next big idea or change it up a little bit. And so I love that one. The next one, this might sound a little bit funny, but I'm actually a professionally trained chef. And so for me, sometimes reading cookbooks is something I love to do. And on the last business trip I took, I went to London before the pandemic. I was in London and I ate at this wonderful restaurant that's an Indian kitchen. And the woman who leads it, her name is Asma. There's a great story about her on Netflix on the show Chef's Table. At any rate, I had the opportunity to meet her. I bought her cookbook. She signed it. And what I love about it is she weaves in her stories of growing up in India and not learning to cook with all of the life changes that led her to ultimately have a restaurant. And so I love reading her stories, but I've also been using her book to kind of travel through food and teach myself to do some Indian cooking. So that's a little bit new and different. And of course, very easy to consume that a little bit at a time. And I'm learning a lot. And of course, I feel connected to that experience as a result of the book.
Oh, that's fabulous, because I'm not a professionally trained cook, but I do love to cook. And so I'm always looking for new inspiring recipes that will get me in the kitchen creating my own. This has been such a great discussion, Karen. And thank you so much for joining us and lending us your insights into working from home.
It's been great to be here. Thanks so much for a conversation. And I wrote the book to let people know you're not alone. I know it's challenging right now. I know we've got a lot facing us and the outlook looks uncertain. The great news is that success is not a location. It's available to anyone, anywhere, even right now in these uncertain and unusual times.
Excellent ending note. And thank you to our listeners. If you are interested in purchasing a copy of Karen's book, Working from Home, it is available on Amazon. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our off-the-shelf book discussion, which is a podcast series, or explore the entire catalog of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting the website at conference-board.org/podcasts. This is Cassie Stern from the Conference Board, and thank you so much for joining us.
This has been Off the Shelf, a podcast by the Conference Board.